There's been another coup in Africa. Soldiers say they are now in control of Gabon. The CBC's Margaret Evans looks at how the mutiny unfolded.
It is by now a well-worn script. This, the 8th military coup in Western and Central Africa over the last 3 years. Gabonese military officers announcing their takeover on state television.
Nous, forces de défense et de sécurité.
Institutions were dissolved, they said, borders closed, and President Ali Bongo under house arrest, from where he issued a plea to his friends for help.
I don't know what's going on. So I'm calling you to make noise, really. I'm thanking you.
Many people did make noise out on the streets, but in celebration. Thanks to the army, said this man. We're liberated, shouted another. Bongo's reign is over. Part of a family dynasty in power for over 50 years, Bongo was just declared the winner of elections analysts say many people suspect were rigged.
And they've welcomed the coup. That's, if the election had been credible, perhaps that reaction would have been different.
Gabon is rich in oil and minerals, but that wealth hasn't trickled down to the hands of ordinary people. Gabon's former colonizer, France, has condemned the coup. France reaffirms its wish for the election results once known to be respected, says this government spokesman. Anti-French sentiment has grown, not just in Gabon, but in other former French colonies where military juntas now rule. One of the coup leaders, Presidential Guard head General Brice Nguema, is expected to play a key role in the coming days, feted here by soldiers shouting his name and calling him president. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
For more on what's behind all this political instability, we've reached David Otto. He's a counterterrorism consultant for NATO on West Africa and the director of the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategy Studies. And we reached him tonight in Abuja, Nigeria. David, let's just start with your reaction to this latest coup now in Gabon.
I think what we're experiencing in sub-Saharan Africa is the equivalent of the Arab Spring, whereby some level of military actors are taking away leaders from power that have been either very long in power, like in the case of Gabon, or in the case where we've seen leaders who are changing the constitution, or perhaps are not fulfilling part of what they signed for in terms of the democratic process. Gabon is now the 8th successful military coup that we are now seeing in the part of West and Central Africa. Now, the big question is which country is going to come next, as major regional blocs like the African Union and ECOWAS and ECAS failed to prevent these coups from happening. So the situation is almost a pandemic as we speak.
But David, you ask what's going to happen next, like which country is going to fall next. So what is the root causes of this concentration of coups that is taking place right now in West and Central Africa?
I think part of what we've seen as a pattern is that we are, experiencing some kind of an anti-French democratic movement, whereby most of the military donors are saying that they are liberating their countries from the stronghold of France, which, of course, had the Franc-Afrique policy. Mm-hmm. But we've also seen that there is an issue in terms of how democracy is being operated within these countries. You have situations where leaders are changing the constitution halfway to remain in power for a long time. We have a situation where democracy is being used to mask authoritarian and some kind of dictatorial regime. The military has been at the forefront of keeping leaders in power instead of protecting national security. And what we're experiencing is that the military is now taking over and replacing these leaders that they find as being vulnerable to a process that doesn't work, for the general population.
I mean, the leader in Gabon, his dad gave it to his son, and that family has been running that country for a long time now. How does this instability affect the West then, David, both economically and strategically?
Of course, this is a time when countries like the United States, France and the European Union, they have a significant interest in this part of sub-Saharan Africa. For example, in the case of Niger, which we just experienced a few weeks ago,
yes.
The United States has military drone base in that country. They do business with a lot of these African countries. There's a lot of investment from the West. There's a reliance, of some of the mineral resources that come from these countries. Now, the fear is that from a strategic point of view, countries like Russia will be coming in to significantly play a key role and make sure that, they assert their presence in this part of the country. So it's a worry, not just for the United States and European countries, but it's also a worry for the entire Africa, that instability is something that doesn't lead to any sort of development.
Yeah, and we've seen the role that the Wagner Group has played in some of these countries. So lastly now, David, international sanctions have been imposed in response to these coups, but they seem to have limited impact. What do you think then is the best way for the international community to respond to these military takeovers?
I think there are two things that the international community needs to do, not just react and issue strong words of condemnation. I think the international community needs to look at how these countries have, been establishing their democratic institutions, whereby you have situations where there is no independence of the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. There is rampant corruption. But I think also a very key point is that, we need to start focusing on research, on understanding why these military coups succeed and why others fail. And I think this is, a key area which the international community should focus on looking at to understand the temperature in terms of how these African countries are, kind of experiencing the form of democracy and an overthrow of the democratic systems, as we've seen in these cases.